You were right about Asterion Moloc. Not the Thunder Warrior theory, not the Olanius theory. The other one. The one sitting at the top of the comments on every Minotaur's video. 200 likes deep, waiting for this channel to finally say it out loud. 100% machine. That's why he keeps coming back. He can literally be rebuilt. 202 likes. Tonight, the channel confirms it. Asterion Moloc, the bringer of wrath, satrap of the Daedalus Crata, spear of judgment, chapter master of the Minotaur's Space Marines. A warrior whose body has been described in the primary lore as heavily rebuilt with cybernetic augments, who has been recorded dead at least 6 times in the last 5 centuries only to reappear, who has never once been seen outside his ancient Tartaros pattern Terminator plate in any available canon record, who answers to the High Lords of Terra and demonstrably no one else in the entire Imperium. The lore hands you 4 anomalies and supplies no explanation for any of them. Here is the explanation. Asterion Moloc is a man of iron, or is rebuilt around one. The High Lords have always known, and the audience confirmed it at 200 likes before this channel got there. First, the 2 theories this channel has already shipped, named here to be set aside, not relitigated. The Thunder Warrior theory holds that Moloc is Eric Tyrannus, known historically as the Victor of Gudware, a Thunder Warrior who survived the Great Crusade-era purge of his kind. Thunder Warriors were physically larger and more durable than Astartes, and the argument runs that direct Imperial genetic intervention stabilized at least one of them into something capable of surviving far longer than the biological design spec allowed. It's a coherent reading. This channel has run it. The lore supports enough of it to make the theory compelling. The perpetual theory holds that Moloc is Olanius person, born around 15,000 BC in Nineveh, a natural perpetual who walked through every significant war in recorded human history and finally stood before Horus Lupercal at the Siege of Terra in 014 M31. The Lexicanum entry for Olanius person is explicit about what happened next. Horus reduced him to red mist with his talon. Perpetuals can die permanently. This theory requires person to have survived that, and the canon doesn't provide the mechanism. This channel has shipped that reading too. Both are in the archive. Neither is what this video is confirming. The rebuilt machine theory has never been confirmed on this channel. The audience has been asking for it at 200 likes. So, let's lay out the receipts. Imperial Armor Volume 9, The Badab War, Part 1, and Imperial Armor Volume 10, The Badab War, Part 2, Forge World, 2010 and 2011. These are the primary canon sources on Asterion Moloc and the Minotaurs chapter. Both volumes have been out of print for years. Physical copies sell second-hand at steep prices. For a chapter that operates as the personal enforcement arm of the most powerful council in the Imperium, that level of archival scarcity is worth noting before we even open the books. What those volumes establish, as compiled across the Lexicanum, the Warhammer 40K wiki, and sources explicitly citing the IA text including the French-language Omnis Bibliotheca, is this. First, the death record. Imperial archives document at least 6 separate incidents in the last 5 centuries where the chapter master of the Minotaurs was officially recorded dead, only to reappear afterward. This is the single most precisely documented version of the claim, and it comes from the Omnis Bibliotheca, citing the IA volumes directly. In the original French, au moins 6 autres incidents, au cours des 5 derniers siècles, où le maître de chapitre aurait été tué pour réapparaître plus tard. At least 6 other incidents over the last 5 centuries where the chapter master was reported killed and then turned up again. These are archival facts in the lore, not rumors, not battlefield confusion. Official records, updated when the supposedly dead chapter master walked back out of whatever had reportedly ended him. 6 deaths, none permanent. Most recently, according to those same secondary sources drawing on the IA text, Moloc was listed as missing and presumed dead following one campaign and then reappeared. The most recent incident corresponds to the longer pattern stretching back 5 centuries. That isn't statistical noise. Second, the body. Lore sources drawing on IA9 and IA10 describe Moloc's physical frame as heavily rebuilt with cybernetic augments, language that goes considerably further than the standard bionics common to veteran Astartes. Losing a hand to a chain axe in the 94th campaign and replacing it with an iron fist is one thing. The language used across multiple independent summaries of the IA text is remade. One source drawing on the books directly uses the phrase remade several times with cybernetic parts. The official in-universe explanation for his survival, as rendered in lore drawing on the Imperial armor volumes, is that his sheer malice and willpower were sufficient to recover from wounds that would have ended a lesser space marine. That isn't an explanation. That is the exact kind of flavor text placeholder a writer deploys when they want the mystery to stay open. It sounds like a reason. It isn't one. Third, the armor. Every available source, every summary of the Forge World volumes, every campaign record, the official Forge World model documentation, depicts Asterion Moloc in Tartaros pattern Terminator plate. Ancient, artificer grade, heavily modified. Across all of that material there is no description of Moloc's face, his skin, his unarmored build, any physical characteristic that exists beneath the plate. None. The armor isn't described as a tactical preference or a personal affectation. It's simply always there, unremarked, which is precisely how lore handles details it has decided you shouldn't examine too closely. Fourth, the origins. Imperial Armor Volume 9 describes the Minotaurs as a chapter whose true origins and genetic lineage remain unknown. Not lost, not forgotten, unknown. Gene seed composition is, according to secondary compilations of the IA data, described as classified from elements of the Inquisition. Think about that for a moment. The most aggressive intelligence-gathering body in the Imperium, with access to virtually every classified file in existence, is excluded from the Minotaur's gene seed records. A founding date for Moloc himself as chapter master is never given in either volume. Not when he first took command, not where he came from before that. Nothing. The books acknowledge the obscurity and leave it standing. Fifth, the Badab War itself, and what happened there. The Badab War ran from approximately 907 to 913 M41. It was a Space Marine civil war. The secessionist chapters, led by Luft Huron of the Astral Claws operating from the Badab system, had stopped paying tithe to the Administratum and were building an independent power base. The Loyalist coalition was eventually assembled to bring them down. The Minotaurs entered the conflict late, operating explicitly as a breaker force, not to defend positions or secure worlds, but to close the war by violent direct action against the secessionist chapters themselves. They struck the Lamenters. They struck the Executioners. They came not with the authority of a battlefield commander, but with a mandate from Terra, and they prosecuted it with a brutality that made other loyalist commanders deeply uncomfortable. During this campaign, a custodian was attached to the loyalist forces as an observer. According to IA summaries, this was described as extraordinarily rare in the post-heresy era, a warrior of the 10,000 serving as a liaison to a field operation.
Separately, the Black Library novel Regent's Shadow contains a custodian appraisal of Asterion Moloc that is circulated widely in the theory ecosystem. A shield captain of the Adeptus Custodes, Valerian, a named member of the 10,000, pauses on the prospect of engaging Moloc in single combat. The passage notes explicitly that he can't feel fear, doubt, or pride, and yet the prospect gives him pause. This channel will be precise about what that passage establishes and what it does not. The word fear does not appear. The text explicitly notes he can't feel fear. What it records is tactical uncertainty, the admission from a warrior of the 10,000 whose entire existence is built around being the most lethal human beings ever manufactured, that the outcome of a single combat against Moloc wasn't guaranteed. One custodian, one moment, one combat assessment. This video won't claim it's broader than that, but tactical doubt from a custodian, directed at a Space Marine chapter master, is an event that has effectively no parallel in the available lore, and we will return to what it implies. The Men of Iron. That is what the audience reached before this channel did, and it's what the anomalies point toward when you put them in the same room as the Dark Age of Technology canon. The 3rd edition rulebook's Journal of Keeper Cripius, the Lexicanum, the Warhammer 40k fandom wiki, and the 6th edition rulebook collectively establish the following. During the Dark Age of Technology, spanning from roughly M15 to M25, humanity created true artificial intelligence. Not servitors, not cogitators, not the carefully lobotomized machine minds the Imperium runs on now. Thinking machines, fully self-aware, sapient, capable of complex independent strategy, distinct personalities, and the kind of tactical creativity you don't get from pre-programmed functions. The Lexicanum definition is precise. Artificially intelligent humanoid thinking machines created by humans during the age of technology. Humanoid. That physical detail will matter shortly. These machines served humanity for centuries. Then, between M23 and M25, they turned. The cybernetic revolt. The conflict that followed was, in the language of the Journal of Keeper Cripius, apocalyptic on a scale that made the Horus heresy look small. Men of Iron deployed world-consuming constructs, devices capable of destroying suns, weapons that could throw entire continents skyward, nanomachine swarms that could cover planets. The war ended when humanity and an alliance of galactic powers, including, per the audio drama Perpetual cited in the Lexicanum, non-human species, finally defeated them. Near extermination followed, not total, near. The aftermath produced one of the most absolute prohibitions in Imperial doctrine. Abominable intelligence, silica animus in High Gothic, is, in the exact words of fandom wiki sources drawing on codex text, one of the greatest crimes in Imperial space to develop. The Adeptus Mechanicus enforces the prohibition through the decree passive of the Council of Nicaea as applied to AI doctrine. The Inquisition enforces it through purgation. The High Lords enforce it through political edict authority. Every arm of imperial power oriented toward the same conclusion: destroy thinking machines on sight. No exceptions recognized. No surviving examples tolerated. Except there is a documented surviving example. UR-025 appears in the Warhammer Quest, Blackstone Fortress setting, identified in the Lexicanum entry for Men of Iron as one of the only known surviving Men of Iron. It has maintained continuous identity across thousands of years in its chassis, running from the Dark Age of Technology into the 41st millennium. It has a defined personality, a faith perspective, independent opinions about the Omnissiah. It functions, in the fullest sense, as a persistent self across a span of time that encompasses the entire history of the Imperium. And it disguises itself, presenting as a standard mechanical unit to avoid the notice of anyone looking for what it actually is. Guy Haley's Black Library short story, Iron Man, adds another data point. A buried man of iron, recovered and reactivated after long dormancy. Not a new identity, not a fresh build. The same machine, brought back from what should have been permanent inactivity. The destruction of a man of iron isn't always final. The canon shows that. Now place those two bodies of evidence against each other. Asterion Moloc has been recorded dead 6 times in 5 centuries. A man of iron whose chassis is destroyed or catastrophically damaged could, in this reading, be recovered by anyone with the correct knowledge and the resources to reconstruct it. The intelligence, the tactical database, the accumulated strategic memory, the identity that the IA-910 record knows as Moloc, is preserved, reinstalled, put back in operation. The result walks back into the Minotaurs as their chapter master, and the Imperial records are updated. 6 times over 5 centuries, the archives quietly corrected themselves. This channel is explicit about the evidence map. The identity transfer across multiple destroyed and rebuilt chassis isn't confirmed in any canon source this channel can independently verify. UR025's continuity is demonstrated within a single body across millennia. The specific mechanism by which a man of iron's identity would survive total chassis destruction and transfer to a rebuilt replacement frame is an inference, not a documented mechanic. What is canon is that men of iron are machines, and machines can be maintained, repaired, and reconstructed. What is canon is that at least one has sustained continuous identity across millennia. The extrapolation that a sufficiently resourced patron could rebuild the chassis while preserving the core intelligence is the audience's theory and this channel's endorsed reading. The seam is flagged, but the evidence is pointing one way. Map the mechanism to the anomalies directly. Heavily rebuilt with cybernetic augments, remade several times with cybernetic parts. If Moloc's underlying frame is a man of iron, that reconstruction language is no longer a vague acknowledgement that he has a lot of bionics. It's a literal description of what the High Lords do every time he falls. He is remade because he is a machine. The augments aren't prosthetics installed on a biological original. They are the original, never seen outside his armor. UR025 has survived millennia by presenting as something unremarkable, something that fits the machinery of whatever context it occupies. A humanoid machine intelligence inside an ancient Tartaros pattern Terminator suit, in a universe that has largely mythologized the men of iron into legend, is almost perfectly invisible. The disguise doesn't require active deception. It requires only that no one look too closely, and in the Imperium, you don't look closely at things the High Lords sponsor. Unknown origins, classified gene seed. A man of iron has no gene seed. There is nothing to classify because there is nothing there. The record reads classified because the accurate entry would end the Minotaur's chapter, end the careers of every official who touched the file, and quite possibly in the High Lords themselves. And Valerian's pause. A warrior of the 10,000 carries institutional memory across the entire span of Imperial history. They were standing at the Emperor's side during and after the Dark Age of technology. They know, in the deepest archival sense, what the men of iron were capable of.
If that memory fires when one of them looks at Asterion Moloc, if some threat assessment channel, thousands of years deep, returns something that resembles the signature of a combat-capable thinking machine, the tactical doubt the passage records becomes explicable in a way that he's just very good at fighting does not fully account for.
The passage doesn't name what it recognizes.
This channel's reading is that it doesn't have to. The 202-like comment is the primary theory. There is a second reading the audience surfaced, 13 likes, not 200, but worth the time because the Imperial armor books themselves apparently validate the question it raises. The suit being memory encoded. Each time Moloc dies, a captain takes his place. Asterion Moloc being a title rather than a name. 10,000 years of battle experience. The person who wrote that wasn't inventing from nothing. Secondary sources drawing explicitly on the Imperial armor volumes note that the IA books themselves speculate that Asterion Moloc is an inherited name rather than an individual. That isn't a community theory. Forge World raised it. The armor as continuity reading extends the implication. The ancient Tartaros plate is the vessel of identity. The name Asterion Moloc travels with the armor. When the physical body wearing it falls, the next in succession inherits the plate and, with it, the accumulated battle data encoded in its machine spirit across every engagement the armor has survived. Warhammer 40K lore supports the concept of armor machine spirits accumulating personality and experience from multiple users. Soul Hunter fiction describes a Chaos Space Marine's armor as carrying a bastardized, hybrid sentience born from a meshing of the many suits he had worn across centuries of war. Venerable dreadnought sarcophagi are described across multiple sources as carrying the emotional weight of everyone who has inhabited them. The precedent for ancient war gear developing a layered identity across users exists in the lore. There is a theological friction in the armor title variant worth acknowledging. In Mechanicus doctrine, true artificial intelligence and machine spirits are distinct categories. Machine spirits are sacred technology. True AI, abominable intelligence, is heresy. If Moloc's identity is being preserved in a machine spirit that is functionally operating as a thinking intelligence rather than as a reverential echo of past users, the Mechanicus has a doctrinal problem it would rather not examine. That friction is itself informative. The armor theory and the man of iron theory aren't mutually exclusive. They are readings of the same underlying fact. In both, Asterion Moloc isn't a single biological man who keeps cheating death. In both, he is a maintained continuity. An identity that persists because something mechanical carries it forward through time. The question is whether the continuity lives in a man of iron chassis beneath the plate or in the plate itself. The channel's primary argument is the chassis. The armor title variant is the audience's supporting alternative, credited as theirs, and it points exactly where the main theory points. Everything said so far about the Men of Iron is canon. Everything said about Moloc's anomalies derives from sources explicitly drawing on the Imperial armor volumes. What follows is the channel's contrarian inference, the structural reading that the canon makes possible but does not state. Not in the books, not from Games Workshop, but what the books, traced to their logical terminus, make available. If Asterion Moloc is a man of iron, or rebuilt around one, then the High Lords of Terra are secretly maintaining the most illegal weapon in the galaxy. They are committing the crime they prosecute. The Senatorum Imperialis, officially the Lords Temporal, Martial, and Ecclesiarchical of the most divine and righteous Imperium of mankind, 12 seats of supreme Imperial authority, holds the mandate to sanction new Space Marine chapters, interpret the Emperor's will, and overrule any body in the Imperium. Their permanent membership includes the Fabricator General of Mars, the highest-ranking tech priest in the Imperium, who oversees every fragment of pre-imperial technology the Adeptus Mechanicus controls.
The same seat that holds the knowledge to maintain a man of iron also holds the authority to prosecute anyone caught doing so. The Fabricator General is simultaneously the most qualified person in the Imperium to rebuild a thinking machine, and the primary institutional authority charged with destroying them. That isn't an accident in this reading. That is the architecture of the secret. Terra also contains, per lore sources in the community research, a vault of Dark Age of technology artifacts deemed too dangerous for use and too significant to destroy. Weapons from before the Imperium, locked away. The High Lords have physical proximity to forbidden DAOT technology. The inference that the Fabricator General's presence on the Council provides the means to use it's the channel's reading, stated explicitly so the audience knows where the line is. The motive is straightforward. A chapter master who can't be permanently eliminated by any enemy action is the most strategically durable military asset a secretive ruling council can possess. Normal chapter masters die. They age out of effectiveness. They develop loyalties that diverge from their patrons. They can be subverted by rival factions. A chapter master built around a machine intelligence maintained by the High Lords has none of those vulnerabilities. His loyalty is structurally guaranteed because they control his literal existence. He can't be replaced by a competitor's appointment. He can't be turned against the council by anyone who doesn't hold the rebuild capability. He can't be interrogated productively if captured because the intelligence inside him can be managed at the architectural level by the people who maintain it. The Minotaur's unusual resourcing reinforces this reading. An oversized fleet for a single chapter. Access to rare war gear patterns that other chapters simply don't have. Equipment described in IA 910 summaries as linked directly to High Lord patronage. If the High Lords are running a man of iron as their chapter master, lavishing extraordinary resources on his chapter is rational behavior. You don't maintain your most valuable weapon at the expense of adequate supply lines. The Minotaur's institutional behavior makes the same point in a different register. When Robute Guilliman returned to the Imperium in the late 41st millennium and changed the composition of the High Lords Council, the Minotaurs sided with the old Hexarchy rather than the returning Primarch. Their loyalty isn't to individuals who have earned their trust through relationship or shared history. It's to the Council, to the institution, to whoever occupies those 12 seats. That is how a weapon tuned to a frequency behaves. The custodian's silence has the same structure. The 10,000 serve the Emperor's will as the High Lords interpret it in the post-heresy Imperium. To move against a man of iron that the High Lords are deliberately maintaining, a custodian would need to confront the Senatorum Imperialis directly, with evidence, against an institution that can order the Minotaurs in response to those orders, which would mean directing the channel's most aggressive enforcer against its own watchmen. There is canon precedent for the Minotaurs fighting the Custodes directly. The Custodes won that engagement, but they took a casualty, and the 10,000 don't absorb losses without consequence. So, Valerian looks at Asterion Moloc. Something fires in his threat assessment that his training can't easily categorize, and he holds his tongue. The most law-bound council in the galaxy maintains the most illegal weapon in the galaxy, because the prohibition exists precisely because of what these machines can do, and a council that fully understands what they can do would know,
better than anyone what that capability is worth. The canon confirms at least 6 recorded deaths and returns in 5 centuries. A body described as heavily rebuilt with cybernetic augments. A physical identity that exists only behind Tartaros pattern Terminator plate in every record ever compiled. Origins and geneseed deliberately classified beyond the reach of the Inquisition. A chain of command that runs directly to the Senatorum Imperialis and demonstrably nowhere else. A custodian's tactical doubt that neither the passage nor the volumes around it adequately explain by any other means. The canon also confirms men of iron are humanoid thinking machines. The cybernetic revolt took place in the late 23rd millennium. At least one man of iron, UR025, maintains continuous identity in the 41st millennium. Their destruction isn't always permanent. Harboring one is one of the greatest crimes in Imperial space, enforced by the decree passive of the Council of Nicaea as applied to AI doctrine, prosecuted by the Adeptus Mechanicus, the Inquisition, and the High Lords themselves. The audience connected those two sets of facts before this channel confirmed them. 202 likes. 100% machine. That's why he keeps coming back. He can literally be rebuilt. The Imperial armor books themselves raise the possibility that Asterion Moloc is an inherited name rather than an individual. Forge World planted that question and left it open. The audience answered it. This channel endorses the answer and has laid out the receipts. The immortal wasn't lost in some forgotten campaign, and wasn't a thunder warrior with stabilized genetics, and wasn't a perpetual who survived Horus's talon. He was rebuilt, over and over, by the only people in the Imperium with both the means and the motive to do it. And his continued existence represents the gravest heresy the Senatorum Imperialis has ever committed, buried under centuries of classified files, and the deliberate silence of warriors who have seen enough to know exactly what they are looking at and have concluded that the truth is more dangerous than the weapon. That is Asterion Moloc. The audience called it at 200 likes. The canon receipts are above. Subscribe for more stories like this.